Konnichiwa, Kawaii Critic here to finally share my OC backstory. This is something I meant to do a bit earlier, but with all the reviews I have on my other channel and stuff of that nature, I kind of just started writing it, and yeah, so there's that. Anyways, just a few notes here. The first thing being, the other OC name that I have in the story might change at some point, but I don't know if that will be the case. The other second note is that some of this is based off of true events and some of it is not. And the last note that I will say is a special thanks to Tyandaga, who gave me the inspiration to write a story that's not necessarily based in Equestria, or at least starts there. So that being said, let the dramatic reading of Kawaii Critic's backstory begin. My story is not one that begins in Equestria. My journey starts in a land called Pokio. Pokio was a migrated country ruled by dragons for decades, a land of famous samurai and ninjas. It was a country of simplicity. This land had gathered its traditions. One thing that it held dear was honor. Even when the landscapes got bigger and more modernized, the one thing our descendants carried on was our honor. One other tradition was to obtain a similar cutie mark to those who raised you. I was a simple earth pony named Kawaii Critic. As a young colt, I had an honor most others could only dream of. I got to meet the Dragon Emperor. My father was in good graces due to his cutie mark involving matchmaking. It was his job to find a royal dragoness worthy of the emperor. My father brought me with him so that I may be able to obtain my cutie mark. I walked under this nice red carpet. The emperor was a long green and white dragon. His body arched downward slightly. My father and I bowed in respect. We talked for only a short while. I was surprised to see how humble the emperor was. However, I didn't feel like this was quite right, and what I wasn't meant to do. My father and I returned home. He was expecting me to get my cutie mark in at least 2 more meetings. He allowed me to go outside. So I went outside, and I stopped at the sidewalk. On the other side of the street, there was a green colt standing there, somewhat idle. He started eyeing me, so I took a deep breath. I tilted my head and slightly spoke. Konnichiwa! The green pony looked up. His his wild white mane swayed just a tad. He had a bit of a curious look to him as he asked, "What?" I shook my head. This was the first colt I met that spoke English. Tilting my head downward, signaling an apology, I spoke in English. "Hello." The colt tilted his head, gawking in a rather smug demeanor, as he bluntly pointed out, "You're a blank flank." I looked at my brown blank flank and shrugged. "It's no big deal. I'm in no rush to find my destiny." The green colt directed another question to me. "What's your name, blank flank?" I properly introduced. "I'm Kawaii Critic, but you can just call me Kawaii." The green colt gawked back once more. "Yuck! Even I know Kawaii just means cute. That's a stupid name." I smirked and decided to tease him back. "Okay, Hulk, what's your name then?" The green colt posed firmly as he introduced. "I'm Rice Bun." I laughed. "Ha! Good enough to eat." Rice Bun walked over and he asked, "Wanna be friends?" I nonchalantly nodded, "Sure." Things between Rice Bun and me would only get more bizarre. We discovered various video games together and created imagined scenarios based on those games. The way he behaved to this day confused me. He usually let me be in charge of our wild made-up adventures. We started to see other tourists and heard lots of slang. When it started to get cold, I bought blue jeans and a gray hood to cover up. There were other times I did wear more formal attire, but it was more for festivals. I also cut my tail off and covered the base with a white bandage wrap. I also cut the top of my hood and wrapped the top of my hair through it. This was in honor of the samurai during one of the festivals. Of course, Rice Bun got on me for a bit, but I managed to get through it. The more my father tempted me to go back to meet the Dragon Emperor, the more I wanted to play a small prank on him. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but when I met with Rice Bun, things went accordingly. I asked, "What's up?" Rice Bun replied, "Nothing much. This kid stuff has gotten boring, that's for sure." I raised a sneaky eyebrow. "Want to pull a prank on my dad? I've been hatching this sick plan." Racebon nodded with confidence. "I'm game for whatever." I laid out the plan rather simply. "So check this out. My dad hasn't met you yet, so I figured you'd come on by, and once my dad drops in on us, I'll kiss you." Ricebun backed up. "Whoa, dude, that's stupid. Why would I kiss you?" I winked, just to mess with him, as I replied. "It's obvious. It's to make him think that we're in love. He's pretty big on the love thing, after all." Ricebun came up to me and shook me, then asked, "Again, you're asking me to kiss another cult." I raised my brow and said, "There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, it's just a plain it's just a short, playful kiss, completely harmless." Ricebun quickly answered, "Fine." So, the plan came into action. Ricebun and I were waiting, and my father returned. As he entered, and he could see us, I leaned in and I kissed Ricebun right on the muzzle. I saw him blushing, and I quickly glanced at my father, who just stormed out. I had no idea how bad things would turn out. In fact, this would be the last time I would ever see Ricebun ever again. I was eventually told by another stallion that I was disowned. I brought shame to the Kawaii family name. Ricebun would end up moving elsewhere in Tokyo. I ended up in the slums. There, I would meet others who were nice enough to teach me some capoeira and a little Spanish as well. And that's when I met her. A young light pink filly with sapphire eyes. I became mesmerized, falling hopelessly in love at first sight. I didn't know it yet, but this is when I would break down. Words were just impossible to find whenever I was near her, so I started to seclude myself. I also started writing about Ricebun around this time. I saw a poster that would become one of my main mantras. It said, "Lie to get a job, cheat at video games you've beaten, and steal that very special pony's heart away." I saw that filly again, but still felt I had nothing to offer. And before I knew it, she was gone too. I started doing capoeira just to make money. I bought bigger jeans and a bigger hood as I slowly grew into it. I kept my tail to one strand, but my mane was getting rather unkempt. As I was alone, but I never stopped working. Even in the heavy rain, I hit up the streets. Soon the mysterious fillies whose name I never learned also became a part of this book I was writing. Soon I gained enough money and brought a boat ride over to Equestria. Once there, I started to attend a higher level of education. Still, that story I was writing consumed me. It became my obsession, almost to the point where I thought I was going to get my cutie mark in writing. I started to try to sing, but I usually did that home while I was home alone. I discovered metal, which became my main genre I listened to while I wrote. The songs kept me determined. I wrote so much that I started to even hear my teachers call me out on it. One of them said, "You need to stop writing and join us." Alas, my obsession only got worse. I would write without looking back to edit. I played more video games and barely talked with the other ponies and stallions. More and more, I was told to stop. My story was becoming a novel that had all these superheroes. I guess at that time I felt like I needed one in my life. I wanted to share my novel. I was met with only negative responses. I graduated only doing the bare minimum of work. College was next, and I knew it would prove to be a nightmare. I became even more reclusive, knowing full well I wouldn't be able to hold up any of my friends at this time. I looked back to my story for the first time and deleted the entire novel to start over from the beginning. I even tried taking writing classes. I shared my novel with the others. One stallion said, "You'll never see your book published and on the shelves." Those words, on top of the other words I had heard before, developed an inner rage I could not fully understand at the time. I wanted to prove him wrong, along with the teacher and another advisor who said, "You will never publish a book." I had to do it, no matter what it cost. It was expensive, but I still had money, so I just went for it without considering editing the story. I would publish. I would be punished for this. When I got my book, it was full of mistakes. On top of that, it was a complete failure. A bombshell. And it hurt each day knowing I was just a ghost in the eyes of the world around me. I had failed in something I spent so much time into. I would sometimes even cry myself to sleep. Each day was hard, but I still kept going, still holding on to this unknown optimism, even though the world seemed to only get darker. I had heard of this remarkable site simply known as YouTube. I started reviewing shows, movies, and video games. I created other personas just to be safe. When I got my cutie mark, I did not celebrate because I was actually a little bit ashamed. I was still this small pony in this somewhat dark world. I was still scared, and I still kinda am. But that's my story, and it's not over yet. And with that, guys, I'm Kawaii Critic, and remember, guys, to keep it kawaii.